what are your thoughts on the election so far?
Yeah, look, I think overall it's a good thing. It's a good night for Democrats. Joe Biden is going to win the White House, and he will have, expanded the map a little bit with, picking up Arizona and, Georgia. I'm still seeing some weird stuff out of Georgia, and I think we still have a shot at Georgia.
Yeah.
But the one thing that drives me nuts is seeing still Democrats acting like we've lost this election, even though we're going to take back the White House. And that if Donald Trump were in the same position that Joe Biden were, right now, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, Arizona, that he would be claiming some massive mandate, right? And instead, Dems are still, wetting the bed and pointing fingers, when I think that we should take some pride in the fact that we won this election.
Do you think some of that, though, is like an emotional mitigation to evade like a 2016 heartbreak and be able to rejoice when we actually get a positive result? I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. I also think that there was such a misfire in terms of the polling, in terms of Democrats' confidence, in terms of like if you watch the cable news coverage, right? If you watched MSNBC, CNN, you're obviously going to be a little bit let down by these results. But a lot of people got some things very wrong in this race, and I think that's going to be something that we're going to have to examine afterwards.
For sure.
As we're talking about this, this just happened where Wisconsin officially fell for Joe Biden. However, that poll was somewhere between 9 points to 17 points for Joe Biden. Yeah. And like good, quote unquote, good pollsters, they're obviously not good. They're terrible. And this state, like Biden clearly won it, but by 21,000 votes. Like that's an essential tie. So what? I'm like, my mind's blown. I'm like, oh, and like, this from working in communication in general, like being on the campaign, where how much I think the media misses things, or like the people are on one side and like the narratives are on this other side. Like, if you had to guess, like, why are the polls so off? Like, why is the narrative so wrong? Is it because they're bad pollsters? Maybe that's it. Or is there this media fire that's fueling it? Where do you land on that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of those two. And look, a win is a win. I don't care if Biden wins by right. Like my view here always was Joe Biden just needs to win by one vote in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. I don't give a shit about a fucking mandate. Okay, I just want to win here. And sorry, sorry.
Yeah.
So, sorry for my language.
You're fine.
But I do think that sometimes the political class and the political professional class does sometimes just miss the mark on Donald Trump and does not understand his appeal and always how to reach his supporters. And I think that that's going to be a story of this campaign too, is that once again, like in 2016, the pollsters didn't quite capture, Donald Trump's enduring strength. And that's one of the things that we've seen down ballot, right, is a lot of the races that we lost, Senate races, House races, were in tough red districts, and that, Donald Trump performed really, really well. And there's view that he's like this aberrant monster and that no one is going to support him just really doesn't comport with the facts. And I think that we've got to understand that, he is a Republican, and he is like Republicans are going to back him, and that he's not like just history's greatest monster, and that people are going to, run away from him in droves.
So true. Eric, I saw your mouth moving. You're going to say something? Sorry, bud.
No, I was just nodding my head along with everything that I was talking about. I do want to talk about one of your superpowers, and obviously it's something that I've been wanting to chat with you a while about. Obviously we both work for candidates that ran in a very crowded primary, and I would be lying if I said I didn't work towards at least your earned media capabilities and looking at different and emerging media like podcasts and other things. I applied, those lessons both to my time for Tim Ryan as well as with Andrew Yang for two reasons. Number one, it definitely seemed like it was working. And number two, just like Pete, I got to work with two messengers that were comfortable being able to work in those environments. Now, obviously the general is different, and both candidates had collective name ID going into the general, and perhaps, obviously being more comfortable in those controlled environments. But I think back to your New York Times op-ed back in the spring in terms of guidance for the Biden campaign. And do you feel like, embracing more of those strategies would have helped more in helping shape the outcome going into election night?
So I don't know. I don't know that I've seen enough where I can definitively say that. I do generally think that communicating more and being more transparent and available is a good thing. And being out there more is generally a good thing. And, I think we can all admit that because of the constraints of the coronavirus, of running in the middle of a global pandemic, that did sort of hold down, Biden's ability to get out there a bit more. And I think that they effectively used surrogates. I know Pete did over like 170 interviews on behalf of the Biden campaign, which is nuts. We just tallied that up. But I always think, and I'm not gonna, I don't want a Monday morning quarterback. I don't want to do anything because everyone's got to run their race. But my general advice to anyone running for president, anyone running for any office, is to get out there more and to be a little bit more, to always try to be aggressive and visible with the media, and especially with, outside of the political bubble, right? And that's a good thing. That's something that you guys did on the Yang campaign. I know a lot of Democrats were critical that he went on like Joe Rogan, but give me a break. How are you going to turn down that audience? It is massive. Right. And that's part of the reason.
HBO, Game of Thrones, Sunday night primetime.
Right.
In terms of numbers. That's
exactly. And it's like, I think that was sort of like one of your first big moments, right? Is when you did that. And I think that, sometimes Democrats can be a little bit precious about how we communicate, how much we communicate, when really what we just need to do is just go out there and get our message out there.
Yep. No, I agree. And piggybacking off of that, though, you were just on Bill Maher's show, which has a marginally better reach than Yang Speaks here, but it's fantastic.
Marginally, Eric.
Marginally. Bill asked you about on the these Trump car caravans. I saw one that was scary as shit. He mentioned why we didn't see these things on the Democratic side. And you said so eloquently, because we're not a fucking cult, which I thought was hysterical, fantastic. But do you feel like we need to be? Is that something that's missing?
Good question.
So this is something I think about from time to time. I've thought about, and no, I just don't. I don't think we need to be. And there are real life consequences to the behaviors of the MAGA people, right? You see that study that showed that 700 people who had attended Trump rallies, passed away from COVID, and that there were thousands and thousands of COVID infections that they could tie, COVID-19 infections that they could tie back to those rallies. But no, I do think passion is a good thing, though, and that is something that we should always work toward and in our politics. But I don't think that we need to become like a cult. There's probably some good middle ground. I also just don't know that this was the election cycle for that sort of attitude among Democrats, right? I just think a lot of this ended up coming down to Joe Biden being someone that people were comfortable with. He's and someone that they trusted enough to sort of lead us through the fallout of the Trump presidency. I don't think that someone like a Bernie Sanders, who definitely does have a lot more of that cult of personality, I don't think we would be sitting here talking about a win if he had been the nominee, even though he inspires a lot stronger feelings.
What would you say, and looking at the map, obviously, and how seemingly divided things look, what would be, an early great public-facing opportunity for the Biden transition to look at as they're trying to, bridge the divide and bring the country back together after what will seemingly be not a very easy transition, to say the least.
I think it's an opportunity to go big. And this is really an opportunity to be the opposite of Donald Trump, to be the opposite sort of the GOP generally, right? Donald Trump has been very divisive. The Republicans in the Senate, who are, likely going to just continue to do what they've been doing for the last bunch of years, are going to be very divisive and partisan. And so I think it's incumbent upon Biden to sort of set the stage that that he's going to try to work in good faith, try to bridge the divide. And I think he's got to just try to do that sort of, have that sort of palate changer of a moment. I don't think it makes sense to come out guns a-blazing, being super partisan, like we're going to, ram all this stuff down your throat. I think he's got to try to strike a more positive, unifying message at the beginning, and find a powerful symbolic way to do that.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I'm with
I
you.
agree.
Andrew said something really interesting a while back. And he said Joe Biden becomes a really interesting figure because of the lane he's in. No matter what he says, it becomes a new normal, or at least normal for the Democrats. And so if Biden, and we joke, like if Biden came out for cash relief or universal basic income, if he comes out for a version of Medicare for all, or at least a better government healthcare option, or anything, his climate change plan is pretty aggressive. If he does that, that becomes way more normalized, than if Bernie ever did it.
For sure, yeah.
I also think
he's got to go on the economy. I just think right now climate change is so important, but he's got to really. I think this is the time to really push through sort of more of an economic message.
Agreed.
I agree. His way of employing empathy will be greeted positively overall. And I think the things that he was so famously remembered for during his Obama years will have a greater display once he gets to move out of this campaign mode. And I think that's what people forget. And I think that's what his bread and butter truly is. So I think some of his natural capabilities will help play a role in how he helps, bring the country together in some respects.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Right.